Hello everyone, I'm Ismail. I study HSPS alongside
Christopher.
And Olive.
and today we're going to talk about supervisions. Now, before we get into Cambridge, you're going to hear the word supervision being thrown around a lot. So to put it simply, a supervision is just a very small scale organised group discussion with a sort of expert in the field and maximum like 2 other people with you. So of course I want to ask, what was your sort of first impressions of a supervision? What did you think they would be like before you actually experienced it?
Yeah, I think before I got here, I kind of seen a bit about like Cambridge or Oxford teaching in films and TV shows and that kind of thing, and it showed it as like an interrogation and a test, and like you'll be torn to shreds and made to look like an idiot. And I think like that was what I was really anxious about when I got here. But actually, I found that all of my supervisors have been incredibly supportive. They've pushed me in an encouraging way and encouraged me to kind of think through and talk through my ideas. But I've never felt like interrogated or targeted, just kind of supported and challenged in a way that's definitely enabled me to kind of grow and develop academically.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I was very fortunate because Cambridge, for people from sort of lower class backgrounds, they sort of had us in for like a week, and we experienced sort of one-on-one supervisions where I thought it'd be, every supervision a test. Did you do the reading? How good is your essay? But, a lot of the time they sort of, appreciate the work that you did, and then they just, push you to, push you to develop it even better. So, what I originally thought it was, not at all how, supervisions actually look. But sort of, what do you guys like about supervision? What do you think makes it so sort of, important to, studying at Cambridge?
I think they're a very unique opportunity. Like with my friends at other unis, their small group teaching is done in much bigger groups. And so the opportunity for it to be 2 or 3 of you, sometimes it's even one-on-one with the supervisor, who's often an expert in their field, has published and researched widely on the issue at hand. That's like an incredibly rare opportunity. And then I think there's also something really unique and amazing about being encouraged to talk through your ideas with them, and the kind of ways that you'll be challenged or the ideas that you put forward will be critiqued really encourage you to think back and like think over the ideas that you're putting forward and make them kind of more rigorous or robust. And so I think you learn in a very unique way, and in a way that you wouldn't really get the opportunity to elsewhere.
I totally agree. I mean, I went to a couple of enormous schools, and I think something about supervisions that I really value is the sort of small group learning, the ability to, again, like talk to someone one-on-one or, one-on-two even, about the work you've been putting out, the ideas you've been writing, the sort of real-world examples you're blending with theory, and the way that you interact with the degree and the reading list and all of that. It's really valuable to me, sort of having that experience and being able to really get so into the nitty-gritty of what you're studying with someone who knows all there is to know about it.
Yeah, no, just to sort of touch on what Olive said, a lot of friends I know, who go to still top tier universities, they will, be able to maybe get an 8-on-1, a 10-on-1, but never as little as, 3-on-1, 1-on-1. And just having these smaller scale sessions just gives you that chance to speak your ideas even more, which is just so useful. But obviously, we all had our first supervisions. How was it, for you? What nerves did you have? Me personally, I sort of had brief experiences with supervisions, but it was really nerve-wracking. I didn't write a particularly good essay from what I remember. I didn't think I had anything cool or important or insightful to say. But as I went to more supervisions, I sort of started coming in, like raring to go, like wanting to discuss an idea or, how I feel about a particular theory.
Well, my first supervision experience was on something called the Bridging course, which is this program that a lot of colleges do for students who've had educational disruptions before coming to university. So I was very grateful in that, obviously, I had that before getting into specifically like the college level supervisions that actually count towards the course and the degree. But when I first sort of did the Bridging course, I think there were also a huge set of nerves for me because I didn't really understand how to write an essay for Cambridge particularly. I'd written essays in school before, but I was like, oh, what is Cambridge looking for? And then the very idea of a supervision, just sort of being sat with an expert and being prodded about what you've written and whether there's any value in it, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. It was really unnerving for me at first. But I think once I stepped into the sort of actual experience, once I'd been in the supervision and once things started getting going, I realized it wasn't, again, like as confrontational as I was expecting it to be. And it was more taking what you'd written and using that as a jumping point, a starting point, a trampoline even, to get into, you know, the finer details, which I found really valuable. And it was something that, you know, the first time I experienced it, it was a real eye-opener as to, you know, just how much I could get out of Cambridge.
Yeah, I think I was nervous as well that it was going to be kind of competitive or tense with like my supervision partner or partners. And actually what I found was that we were able to kind of bounce our ideas off each other. We'd obviously both done the readings, both prepared the same essay questions, and actually, as well as learning a huge amount from the supervisor and the questions and challenges that they pose, I think it was really interesting to be able to kind of collaborate and work with my supervision partner and kind of hear her ideas and her thoughts about like the same readings. And it was very interesting to see how we could read the same readings, explore the same theories, and come to very different destinations in our thinking. And that was also, I think, a really unexpected and amazing benefit to doing supervisions.
Perfect. I think a common misconception is that supervisions are very structured, very robust, when they're actually quite unique. Like me personally, like no one supervision is the same. And you know, I want you guys to sort of talk about how you sort of seen that, like how you've had different experiences with different supervisors, the different styles that, you know, you could potentially experience.
Typically for me, what a supervision will look like is I'll send an essay in maybe 1 to 2 days ahead of time. My supervisor will sometimes write back with just a little bit of feedback, and then also like we'll delve deeper into sort of what I say in this email in the supervision. And then typically we'll sort of sit down, we'll discuss what I've written, what's gone into what I've written, and then also just sort of the general topic at hand. So it'll be a little bit about the specific work that I've written, and then a little bit more about the ideas, what I'm saying, why I'm saying it, and potential next steps, both in improving my essays, but also in, you know, what further to explore ahead of exams and just for general further learning.
I was also surprised by like the variation in how supervisions work and the techniques that supervisors use. Sometimes it will be quite structured. They'll have a specific list of questions or a kind of set of ideas that they've kind of come up with to discuss. Sometimes it will be very based on your essay, bit by bit, argument by argument. Sometimes you'll be asked to read out all or some of your essay, summarise the arguments. Sometimes it will more be about the theories or ideas being discussed. And I think that's also quite a helpful thing, because it's also taught me a lot about how I'm able to learn. I can kind of ask for things to be adjusted or for us to explore things more. And because there's not such a kind of rigid set structure and flow as there is in, say, a lecture, you're able to work at your own pace, slow things down, speed things up, ask more questions. And I think you're ultimately able to adapt your teaching and then your understanding in a way that's much more personalised to you.
I completely agree. And I also just really appreciate you guys sort of briefly touched on it, how diverse it can be. Some supervisors will get you to read your whole essay, will get you to summarize it. Sometimes they just sort of don't really touch on it and take the, you know, exploration, you know, or discussion somewhere else. So I do like how every supervision is really different, and it's just different, a different way to learn. So obviously the three of us, we do HSPS. How would you say, you know, HSPS supervisions, I guess, differ from others, or, you know, how do HSPS supervisions sort of look like?
I think one thing that I find really valuable about HSPS supervisions, and maybe specifically sociology as well, is just how much of the supervision is really about discussing the ideas and really getting into sort of debates about them, about what they mean. I mean, the amount of times that a supervisor and I have literally just debated one another about, you know, does this social or sociological theory have value, or how can we apply this to the real world, or, you know, what do you think about how this instance of like a current event ties into this sociological theory. I think there's a real value in the ability to make those connections, but also the sort of constant debate and discussion that's going on. I think, and it's probably the same for a lot of other humanities subjects, but there's a real sort of challenging of your ideas, and that, you know, having to defend yourself, but not in a particularly frightening way, I think is very valuable, because it makes sure that like you understand why you're saying something and you're not just writing something for the sake of having something to write in an essay.
Yeah, I think also what I find interesting about HSPS supervisions is you'll often be discussing ideas or concepts that you had some knowledge of or sense of before, often, you know, structures or particular histories that are quite commonplace, for example, understanding the patriarchy. But within the supervision system and our kind of teaching, you're exploring them with new information, new theories, new perspectives and new ideas, and so you're able to kind of interrogate your own assumptions that you had maybe going into the reading, whilst also being able to kind of gain these new perspectives or new empirical examples, and so I think it's a very unique way of learning and quite a unique degree in that sense.
Completely agree. So, you know, finally, to end it off, what has been your sort of supervision highlight of the year? Me personally, it's when we did a supervision on Bordeaux, who talked a lot about class. It's a sort of topic that really hits close to home, and sort of similar to what Olive said, you know, it's very commonplace to know about, you know, class structures and class inequalities. But in that supervision, I sort of truly saw how, you know, deep-rooted it is, how it's intertwined with so many different institutions like policing and education. So it was really interesting to just delve like really deep into that topic, and I'm really looking forward to delving even deeper next year.
I think something that I really enjoyed this year was my social theory supervision on Goffman and his work on stigma. And so I wrote an essay about his kind of theory of stigma, and that was something that was really, really interesting and really opened my eyes to a new way of understanding quite a kind of commonplace phenomenon. And in exploring the critiques of his work within the supervision, I kind of realised that those critiques were something that I wanted to explore a lot more, and so then that kind of became the springboard for my dissertation idea, where I'm going to be looking at young women's experiences of disability stigma and kind of trying to blend Goffman's approaches with more kind of structural or critical approaches. But I remember literally sitting in that supervision and thinking, like, this is so fascinating, I can't wait to kind of explore that more. And so that was a bit where I did feel everything kind of click.
I think one thing that I particularly enjoyed this year was sort of working on one of my long essay questions, which was about decolonization and the university. And I think we do a lot of work in HSPS that sort of centers around ideas of race, racism, empire, and those structures, but we don't really get very many opportunities, at least all of the time, to then apply those ideas and those thinkers to the very idea of, you know, the institution that we're learning in. So being able to sort of draw the two of those together has been really valuable. And on top of that, because it was this sort of long essay question, it was something that I developed over the course of a term and then submitted as part of my exam. And I think being able to constantly revisit it with a supervisor and, you know, all in all, create this longer project, I think that's something that was really valuable, and being able to, you know, hand in that essay and know that I was proud of it was also amazing. And it's part of what's inspired me next year as well, to do a dissertation, which I'll be working on a little bit of over the summer, particularly surrounding sort of community care and resistance in queer urban networks. And I think, you know, being able to study that sort of thing and really get into the minutiae of social theory and its applications to the real world, again, over this sort of long-term project, is really valuable, and it's something that I'm very much looking forward to, especially in that supervision type setting with, you know, experts in the field.
Perfect. Thanks so much, guys. I think that wraps up the video. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Nice to do.